All right, welcome back to BC308. We are in Daniel chapter 8. We just read verses 8 through 12, and we want to look at it a little carefully. So, Daniel is seeing this goat from the west. It's moving very fast. It has one very prominent horn, one horn coming. Then it overpowers the ram, destroys the ram. And then it says, verse 8, the male goat, he became very great, but when he became strong, the large horn was broken. Now horns, what do horns represent? Kings, king leaders and their kingdoms. Horns represent leaders, kings. So this horn was broken. Okay, so this horn representing, we will see the interpretation later, but this sudden horn was very strong, growing, suddenly just broken. And then in place of it, 4 notable ones came towards the 4 winds of heaven. So from that one horn, 4 horns came. Okay. And they were exerting their influence. And out of one of them came a little horn. So now, little horn, we have seen it already. Same language is using, little horn. Now he's telling us where this little horn is coming from. Okay, so if you remember in chapter 7, he said there was the 4th kingdom. From the 4th kingdom came 10 horns. Okay, we understand. So then there came a little horn. It was very different from these 10 horns. But we don't know where this little horn is, where he came from. But now in chapter 8, he's giving us detail. Where this little horn is coming from. So this goat, big horn, that horn was broken, 4 other horns came. From one of them, this little horn is coming. 4 horns, 4 kings with their kingdoms. From one of their kingdoms, little horn is coming. Okay, she's given us a clue. And it is this little horn who's speaking all these blasphemous things. The same description connects back to what he said in chapter 7. You know, he's out, verse Daniel 8:9. Out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly toward the south, the east, and the glorious land. That means he's exerting his influence. He's east, south, and towards the glorious land, which is the land of Israel. So he's exerting his influence. And it grew to the host of heaven. That means this little horn is trying to influence even the host of heaven, meaning like the angelic beings, like, speaking against those things, spiritual things. And it cast some of the host and some of the stars to the ground and trampled. And that means, so it's not literally he's pulling those spirits up, but he's just speaking blasphemous things against God and against the angels of God. Okay. Hosts, stars are symbolic of the angel. God is Jehovah Sabaoth, the Lord of hosts. Hosts are the angelic beings. Right? So he's speaking against the hosts and stars. Trampling to the ground means desecrating them. Verse 11, he even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host. Yeah, against the Lord. He's speaking against God himself. Not worried. Not only against angelic beings, against the prince of the, against the ruler of the host. He will explain later who the prince of the host is, but the title is there. Prince of, okay, he's speaking against. And by him, the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So now this is giving us a clue. By this little horn, daily sacrifices in the temple are being stopped. And his sanctuary also was cast down. Meaning he is desecrating the sanctuary, the temple. Which means, for this, when this little horn is doing his work, this has to be in place. That means the daily sacrifices have to be there. And the sanctuary has to be there. Only then this little horn can stop the daily sacrifices and desecrate the temple, the sanctuary. Okay? Now, one thing I want to say. There are a group of Christians, not many, some group, they call them preterists. Preterists. That means these people believe, actually, there are two historical figures. Who did something similar to this description. Okay. There was a Seleucid king, shortly after, when you come to Daniel chapter 12, Daniel 11, or there were the kings from the north, kings from the south. So there was one of those kings. His name was Epiphanes IV, who did something like this. He desecrated the temple in those days. There was the Roman emperor after Nero. There was Nero, who was the Roman emperor during Bible time, New Testament time, who killed Peter and Paul, and he persecuted the Christians. The Roman emperor after him also continued persecuting the Christians. And this was around AD 70, during which time the temple, actually during Nero's time, his general Titus destroyed the temple. And there was the Roman emperor after Nero who persecuted the Christians a lot. So historically, there are two people who kind of match some of these things. Not 100%, but kind of. Epiphanes was one who went and desecrated the Jewish temple. During Nero's time, temple was destroyed. And then there was this other next Roman Empire who persecuted the Jews a lot. When you say Jews, I wouldn't say the Jews, the Jews, especially the Christians. So some people in some Christian circles, they may say, this prophecy is already fulfilled. Because, maybe it happened during Nero's time, or maybe it happened even before, in just right after Daniel. So you may read some commentaries like that. But the thing is this: we have to put all the scriptures together. For example, this little horn, this Antichrist, he not only speaks blasphemous things against God, he not only stops the daily sacrifices, he not only desecrates a temple, but he does many other things. Example, you come to Revelation, he introduces the mark of the beast, which unless you have the mark of the beast, you cannot buy or sell. Neither of those people did it. Happy finish. Those days they had no concept like that. They never did that. Maybe one of them spoke blasphemous things against God. Maybe one of them destroyed the temple. But hey, one person has to fulfill all these prophecies, including some things that we read in Revelation. One of them is he makes an image of the beast, like he makes his own image. He makes people worship that. And he gives a mark, 666. You have to have that mark. Only then you can buy and sell. Nobody did it. I mean, those people, Epiphanes or this Roman general after Nero, Roman emperor after Nero, I forget his name. They didn't do that. They didn't fulfill that part. So while there may be some historical people who came close, they actually did not do this. Plus, they did not, for example, other things that the Antichrist does. He signs a covenant of peace for 7 years. They didn't do it. They didn't sign any covenant of peace with Israel for 7 years. Right? So, to take certain portions of scripture and say, oh, it looks like this man, it looks like that man, it's not correct. Right? You have to take all the scriptures. Okay, what does the scripture say about this man, this Antichrist? We read a little bit in chapter 7. We're reading a little bit now in chapter 8. But there is more. We'll read more in chapter 9. We'll read more in chapter 11. Then we'll read more in New Testament. So many things, other things this man will do, which the Bible says, put it all together. Who is the man who's going to fulfill all this? That is the Antichrist. We shouldn't take one passage, oh, it looks like him. Sometimes people take, Pope is the Antichrist, because something, sometimes they do this, They've done it in the past. They take the Pope's name, then they do the calculation. Oh, it's coming to equal 666. I've seen this quite a few times. Oh, that means this is the Antichrist. Well, just one calculation you've done, but there's so many other things this Antichrist is going to do, just because his name comes to 666 number. There's other things, So we have to be careful when people take one portion and just say something. Okay, but we're getting getting some details here about this little horn. He is exalting himself against the prince of the host of heaven. He's stopping daily sacrifices. The sanctuary, he's throwing down, desecrating the place of the sanctuary. Verse 12, Daniel 8:12. Because of transgression, because of sin, an army was given to him, to this horn, to oppose the daily sacrifices. He cast truth to the ground. He did all this and prospered. That means he has military power. So this man not only has, influence, like we saw over 10 leaders, which we would say, okay, political influence. But now we are saying he even has an army, military power. So he seems to be like a political leader, right? Because he's got both this. And he's stopping the daily sacrifices in the temple. He's casting truth to the ground, doesn't care about truth, law, justice, doesn't care. That's the kind of man he is. But this passage, verses 8 to 12, Daniel 8 to 12, is like, very, very, it has so much detail. Till now, we don't know who that goat is, who the horn is. Okay. But as we read on and we find out, it will be amazing. Okay. I will keep the suspense till we read the other side. If I tell you now, okay. Then let's keep the suspense. Let's read on. Verses 13 and 14, please.
Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, for 2300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed.
Mm. So he's asking, how long was it going to be? Right? He says 2,300 days. Okay. Now, if you look in your note carefully, verse 14, that word days, there will be a little note. In my Bible, it says evenings, mornings. Evenings, mornings. Do you see that in your footnote? In your Bible, there should be a little footnote that says that word next to the word days. 2,300 days. There's a note that days actually means evenings, mornings. Now, why am I saying that? Because an evening and a morning makes one day. Okay. If you have a evening, so the Jewish day started at 6 p.m. So in the evening. The day actually began 6 p.m. in the evening with the Sabbath, quiet. It goes on till next day, 6 p.m. That is one day, evening and morning. Night and day. Night and day. So 12 hours nights, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 12 hours day. Evening, morning. That is one day. So if you take 2,300 evenings and mornings, you cut it into half, it will actually be 1,150 days. What did I say? 2,300. So 1,050. 1,050, correct. 1,050. 1,150 days. Okay. So he's saying that many days, this daily sacrifices will be taken away, and the transgression of desolation, all the sanctuary will be desecrated. 1,150 days. Okay, so keep the number in mind. 1,150 days. That many days. Now, another number we will see is 1,260 days. 1,260 days. That 1,260 days correctly is 3.5 years. But this 1,150 days is 110 days less than 1,260 days. So why is that difference? We don't know exactly, but some explanation we can give. First explanation is the number of days in the Jewish calendar is, I think, about 5 days less than the number of days in the Gregorian calendar. So generally we have 365 days, the Gregorian calendar. Jewish calendar, if I'm not mistaken, is like 360 days or something like that. Some 5 days difference, small difference, not much difference. Some small differences there. The second, so why are we saying this difference? We're trying to explain this, 1,150 days, 1,206 days, 110 days difference is there. How is that possible? So that's one reasoning, but doesn't account for 1,110 days. The other explanation is maybe the actual number of days when the desecration is happening, slight variation about some months. We will also see in Daniel 12, he gives a 45 days difference, which we will see, which people think, okay, it's a time for the cleaning of the temple and all that. Okay, so we don't want to get too worried about this 1,150 days. It is approximately in that range of 1,260 days, in that range, close to maybe like this 3 months difference. When the sacrifices are going to be stopped, when the temple is going to be desecrated, the sanctuary is going to be in desolation, it's going to be trampled underfoot, they're going to dishonor that place. It's going to happen for this number of days. Okay, so there is that variation. We don't have a full explanation to it. We can think of some reasons, but let's read on. Let's read, please, from verse 15 to 17, Daniel 8.
Then it happened, when I, Daniel, had seen the vision and was seeking the meaning, that suddenly there stood before me one having the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai, who called and said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell on my face. That he said to me, Understand, Son of Man, that the vision refers to the time of the end.
Okay, so again, we see some interesting things. Daniel is seeking the meaning of the vision. Right? So we should also do that. When God gives us a vision or a dream, which may seem strange. And God uses that language. He uses pictures. He uses all that, those riddles. He speaks like that. And so initially it may seem very strange to us, but we should not be discouraged. No. Like Daniel, seek the meaning. Oh God, what is it? You're showing me this. Like if Daniel saw a ram and a goat, goat is fighting with a ram and the small goat is defeating the ram. Very strange. But he doesn't give up. He seeks the meaning. What is it? Secondly, we see God is sending angel Gabriel. So God uses angels to minister to us. Right? Now, in this case, very, very significant. So he's sending one of the big major angels. Angel, Gabriel, go help Daniel understand the meaning of this vision. So Gabriel comes, he says, Daniel, this vision refers to the time of the end. That means this thing that you're seeing, it has to do with the end times, very end. Okay, so this is another reason why when people say, oh, one of those people, Epiphanes the fourth, must have fulfilled the prophecy of the Antichrist, or the Roman emperor must have fulfilled the Antichrist. No. It is not about those times. It is time of the end. This little horn who's going to come, who's going to stop the daily sacrifices, who's going to desecrate the sanctuary. When is he going to do it? Time of the end. It's like very end. That is when this thing is going to happen. Okay, so he's given the timing in general, like time of the end. Let's continue. Verse 18 to 22, please.
Verse 18. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in deep sleep with my face to the ground. But he touched me and stood me upright. And he said, Look, I am making known to you what shall happen in the later time of indignation. For at that appointed time, the end shall be. The ram which you saw, having the two horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia. And the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. And as for the broken horn and the fourth that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of the nation, but not with its power.
See, now he's explaining the full meaning of these animals and the vision here. Okay? He's saying the ram with 2 horns, they are the, verse 20, they are the kings of Media and Persia. Now think about this, okay? Daniel saw this vision during the time of King Belshazzar, the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. That means during the Babylonian kingdom. At that time when Daniel saw this vision, the Babylonian kingdom was still very powerful. Belshazzar was ruling. Nobody's thinking he's going to be thrown, overpowered, nothing. But God is saying to Daniel, he has already shown him about that image, after Babylonians will come the next time. So he has that. During the time of Belshazzar, he's showing him into the future. Medes, Persians. So that ram with 2 horns are representing kingdoms of the Medes and the Persians. The small horn is the Medes. The second one, which came bigger than the first one, are the Persians. Now think about this. Daniel is in the Babylonian Empire, but God is showing him the kingdoms that are going to come. They are going to come next. Medes, Persians. Then he says, the goat you saw, he says in verse 21, the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. After Medes, Persians, Greeks will come. Now Daniel never lived that long to see the kingdom of Greece. He didn't live, we didn't see that. But he's written it here. It is several hundred into the future, almost 100 years into the future. Medes will come, Persians will come. After that, Greece will come into power. So quite amazing. That is why the skeptics, who people don't believe the Bible, they say this cannot be true. How can Daniel, who is sitting in the empire of Belshazzar, Babylonian king, give the correct order? Medes will come, Persians will come, then Greeks will come. How he can do that? It's not possible. So they question. But Daniel is correctly given the sequence. Then, notice what he says. Verse 21. The male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now he's giving more details. First king of Greece, Alexander the Great. Now we know him because he came all the way from Greece. He came to northern India. He conquered. So see, he said, this goat coming from the west, Greece. He moves very quickly towards the east. Alexander the Great, starting from Greece, he came all the way till northern India, conquered. Very fast, very powerful. But what happened? It says, as for the broken horn, verse 22. So what happens when this king is growing very fast? Suddenly his horn will be broken. Exactly happened. He died in his 30s, early 30s. He died. And then what happened? His kingdom was divided amongst his 4 generals. So his 4 generals divided the kingdom, Alexander the Great, his kingdom, and they took over portions of his kingdom. So that's what he's saying here. The large horn is between us as first king, and as for the broken horn and the 4 that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. It won't be as powerful as Alexander the Great. But the thing is, that's exactly what happened. After he died, he had 4 generals, they took portions. Of course, they had some fighting, this and all, but they took 4 portions. So that is again another reason why people cannot believe. How he could say all this. Of course, we are saying God has sent Gabriel. Gabriel is explaining the meaning, and Daniel has written it down. But people who question the book of Daniel, they say, how can a man write all this in this detail? Not possible. Because it actually happened like this. So now, after he has told us this, right? The goat, big horn will die, 4 will come, 4 kingdoms will come. Then, from one of those 4 will come the little horn. So now he has told us, from the 4 regions that used to be part of the Greek Empire, from one of them will come the little horn. The challenge we have today is that the countries we have today are not exactly mapped to the same 4 regions in those days. Right? It's not like exactly the same. So we have rough regions like Greek, Turkey, Syria, Egypt. So what used to be the part of the Greek Empire after Alexander the Great died, his kingdom was broadly broken into these 4 parts, but not exactly. So Greece and some neighboring countries was taken over by one of the emperor's generals. Turkey, modern day Turkey, was taken over by another general. Parts of Syria, not exactly Syria, but around that area, was taken over by another general. And then another general took over northern Africa part. So what we do is, we think, Bible says, from one of those 4 air regions, the little horn will come. We don't know exactly which country, but we're looking in that area. Greek and its neighboring countries, Turkey, Syria and its neighboring, Egypt and its neighboring, from one of them. Today, if you look, it is possible the leader of Turkey is aligning very closely with Russia and China. So we don't want to, immediately simply say, oh, he's the Antichrist. No. But we're looking in that region, how these nations are all moving with each other.
speaking like there is a neighboring countries. He was thinking about his four countries: Syria, Egypt,
Turkey and
Turkey, and
Greek, Greece. Yeah.
Greece. So how we can think like they just the four genders they settled there only, like they would have went somewhere else, right?
Yeah. So we have the historical map. It's available online, where they have mapped out the regions taken over by the four generals. It doesn't fit exactly into one country, like it overlaps, but major part will be Greece and some of the neighboring countries. One general took over. And of course, he fought his battles and, he tried to extend, become bigger, all that. Then second general, Turkey. Another portion, Syria and that area, Jordan, Iraq, Iran, some in that region. Another general. Then south, over Egypt, another general, roughly. So they have those maps, history maps. They're not like biblical, but general history. So we can take those maps and say, okay, this is where those four generals were ruling. Of course, they fought their battles and they tried to extend their kingdoms. All those things, usual things that kings do, they did. And then we try to map that with modern day countries. Okay, today here we are. Which are the countries that are falling in this region? I only mentioned the main countries. There are the smaller Eastern European countries that are also covered. It was okay. Somewhere from this area, the little horn will come. Whereas the 10 horns are probably all the main prominent European countries which belonged to the leg of iron, the Roman Empire. So we look at, France, Germany, and Spain, and all those who have more influence there. So they will probably be the 10 leaders, but this little horn will come from one of these smaller countries and influence 3 of them. And eventually all 10 of them will support.
We are connecting these four horns with the 10 horns with the for what we heard for the first
before.
vision. So we are connecting, and then we are connecting from the past to the future, like what had happened till now that we were discussing here. And then these four what generals were there. So we are connecting that past Alexander time to the future. So what gonna happen?
No, the 4 generals already happened. It happened immediately after Alexander died. There is a time gap. So when you think about it, the 4 kingdoms, that is Babylonian, Medes and Persians, Greeks and Romans, or 4 or 5, however you want to count it, all the way to the Romans, they all happened in sequence, one after the other. So we call that history. It already happened. Then there is a time gap for the coming of the little horn. But what the Bible has shown to us is that little horn will come from one of the 4 regions that belonged to the former Greek Empire. So that's the clue. But there is a gap because this little horn and what he is going to do, that is kept for the latter times, the end of times. That is for the end. But the sequence of these 4 or 5 kingdoms happened one after the other, already fulfilled. The little horn, he says, it will come at the time of the end. And that little horn will come and do all these things. That will come. But he's told us in advance where to expect. You can expect him to come from one of these 4 regions that belonged to the first king of the goat, the Greek Empire. So that's why we look carefully at that.
We are getting the clarity because in the first vision we saw out of 10 horns, a small horn, like outside from.
Other than the 10 horns, little horn is
Yeah.
coming, influencing. We don't know where he came from.
We got a little clarity in this vision from 4 four generals, there will be another.
Yeah, from that kingdom that was ruled by these four, from there, this little horn will come. So it's given us a clue.
Can it be also the king of Alexander as well? So even if we see it can relate to the king, even after he died, there was a civil war with like the general war for to take over.
So after Nero was another Roman emperor. So the Roman Empire continued after Nero, and basically the Roman Empire itself much later, I think around maybe around 400 AD, it was divided into two big parts, the Eastern and the Western. So Roman Empire became Eastern and Western Roman empires, two parts, but happened much later after Nero. So after Nero, there was another Roman emperor, and there's several other people who came, who ruled, and then eventually the Roman Empire broke into two parts, but it came much later. So therefore, we can say that it doesn't, like Nero, Roman Emperor Nero, doesn't fit this, it doesn't fulfill this correctly, because he is very clear. He mentions it's the kingdom of Greece, and after he dies, four of his people will take over. Yeah, so he mentions it clearly, in verse 21. The large horn, the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn is its first king, that is Alexander the Great. And then it's broken and forced up in its place. Yeah. Then he says, verse 23. All right. Now he is moving. Let's read verse 23 to 27, please. That means these four kingdoms were not as powerful as the first king under Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was so big, so powerful. He had it from Greece all the way to northern India. So after he died and these four generals took over, they had smaller kingdoms, not as powerful as Alexander. Verse 23 to 27, please.
Verse 23. And in the later times of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise, having fiery futures and understands
Sinister schemes.
sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people. Through his cunning he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without human means. And the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true. Therefore, seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick for days. Afterward, I arose and went about the king's business. I was astonished by the vision, but no one understood it.
So, notice how verse 23 begins. And in the latter time of their kingdom. That means now there is a time gap between this kingdom of Greece and all that he has just described to what he's going to tell us. And in the latter time. So there's a time gap, but the region is the same. It's in concerning that same region. In the latter time of their kingdom, that's that region, when there's, sin has abounded, a king shall arise. So that king we know, like by the description, is the Antichrist. Okay? Because one clue is there. In verse 25, he shall even arise against the prince of princes. He's rising against the Lord Jesus himself, the prince of princes. We saw the same thing, in verse 11, that this man will exalt himself against the prince of hosts. Daniel 8:11. So it's the same description of the same man. But the thing I'm pointing out is saying, in the latter time of their kingdom. So there is time a gap now. He's described Medes, Persians, Greeks, and that from one of those four will come the little horn, but it's going to happen in the latter time. There's a gap. Then this king will arise. This man who has great influence will arise. He does all these things. He will prosper, he will thrive, he will destroy people. And he will speak, he will rise against the prince of princes, and he will be broken without human hands. That means it's God is going to destroy him, deal with him. So he's told us clearly that this king who's going to rise will come in the latter times. There's a gap. You all with me? Yeah, the prince of princes. Yeah, the prince of hosts. So that's what I mentioned earlier. Verse 11, prince of hosts. Verse 25, prince of princes. Like we've in New Testament, the king of all kings. Prince of hosts. Prince of princes. So this man is going to speak against, the Lord himself. And that's why he's going to be destroyed, not with human means. Other human person will not destroy him. But it's the Lord Jesus who's going to come and destroy him. Okay? And then he says, the vision of the evenings and mornings, verse 26, evenings and mornings. So that's why when we broke verse 14, that 2,300 days, that's that evenings and mornings. Okay? So that's why we broke it. And said it refers to many days in the future. It's coming in the future. All right, so let's stop here. Next week, we're going to cover the last part of chapter 9. Right? The early part of chapter 9 is Daniel is praying and all of that. But Daniel 9:20 to 27, it's a very, very, very important prophecy. It's amazing, again, very amazing. Because he tells us correctly about the coming of Jesus, the crucifixion of Jesus, all of that. So we'll do that next week. Yeah, let's close for today. Thank you.